Hey guys. Alright, so we have done the 5 themes of geography, and now elements of a map, map making, understanding maps. We love maps, as much as I know you guys hate doing them. They are important for you. So we're going to get started on the elements of a map, right? So that three-dimensional or the spherical representation of Earth, as we know, is a globe. And it's super awesome when we want to see the Earth as a whole, but when we want to look at a little section, we want to use a map, right? That two-dimensional, that flat, almost like a piece, not almost, it is a piece of paper. And so they give us a different representation, but they have very similar features to one another. So what are those elements that we can look at? So that first one is a title. All right, so it tells what the subject of the map is, right? So the first thing that you should do when you look at a map is the title, right? So if I'm looking at a title that says Virginia's Rivers and Cities, what's that map going to show me? It's going to show me a map of Virginia's rivers and cities. It tells us exactly what the map shows us. All right, so that second thing that we're looking at are the symbols. All right, so these represent different types of information. So natural resources, economic activities, that type of stuff. It might represent a river goes here or some mountains are here. And that also goes into the labels, right? So we have our symbols representing, oh, here's a river. But how do we know what that river is? We look at the labels. It's naming the places, the locations. What is that river named? What's that mountain named? What is that city called? So going into the fourth element, we have different colors. Colors mean different types of information. Blue is water, so a river or an ocean or a sea. Green is typically land. Now we're going into the different types of lines, latitude and longitude lines. So latitude, these are the imaginary horizontal, you're looking at the horizon, horizontal lines. They measure the distance north and south of the equator. So then longitude lines are the vertical lines. Vertical. They measure the distance east or west of the prime meridian. Right? And I may have done it differently because the way this recording is, it's a little flipped backwards. But they are from the prime meridian and they go east and west. All right, so then that next one we look at is a scale. It shows us the distance of the map, right? How much is being represented of the Earth. So for an example, it might say that half an inch is 100 miles in person. So if you take out a ruler and you go half an inch, half an inch, half an inch, that's 100 miles in real life, 100 miles in real life, 100 miles in real life. So the next thing is a legend or the key, right? That explains what the symbols mean, what the colors mean. There's different types of maps. There's all kinds of different colors. Maybe it's a climate map and we can see what the different temperatures of the earth are. Or a political map and it tells us these states are red and typically Republican. Or these states in the US are blue and they're typically Democratic. That next one we're looking at is the compass rose, and it shows us the directions, all right? And on a compass rose, you have north, south, east, and west. How do I remember what those mean? Never eat soggy waffles. North, east, south, west. Never eat soggy waffles. All right, and the last thing, not all maps necessarily have this, but it's a good feature to know about, is a locator globe. And it'll be a little globe and it'll highlight the area of the map. It'll highlight that part of the globe and what the map is representing. So, what is latitude, longitude, and hemispheres? They can be very confusing. So, latitude, these are the imaginary lines, right? They run east to west. All right, and they are parallel to the equator. All right, and these lines, they represent how far away from the equator you are. So the equator is at 0 degrees. You can go up to 90 degrees north, up to the North Pole, or you can go up to 90 degrees south near Antarctica, the South Pole. All right, they're measured in degrees, 0 degrees. You can go up to 90. You can go down to, you can also go down to 90. So for an example here, Berlin, Germany is 52 degrees north. That means it's 52 degrees north of the equator. So longitude lines. Longitude. These are the imaginary lines. They run from north to south, North Pole to South Pole, and they measure the distance east or west of the prime meridian. All right, the prime meridian, and runs through Greenwich, England. It's also at 0 degrees. You can go 180 degrees east and 180 degrees west of the prime meridian. So for this example here, Berlin, Germany is 13 degrees east. All right, so that means it's 13 degrees east of the prime meridian. So we talked about absolute location in the last video there. So absolute location, right? The GPS coordinates, the exact longitude and latitude. So the absolute location of Berlin, Germany is 52 degrees north and 13 degrees east. So then this last bit that we talk about here are different hemispheres. All right, a hemisphere is half of the Earth. So the equator, it divides the Earth into the northern and southern hemisphere. So for an example here, North America is entirely in the northern hemisphere, but South America is mostly in the southern hemisphere. So then the other two hemispheres are west and south, and the prime meridian splits the Earth into the eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. So South America, we know that they are in the southern hemisphere, but they are also in the western hemisphere. Africa is also in the southern hemisphere, but it's in the eastern hemisphere. So just like before, those main words to know, and I've highlighted them down here. So globe, map, latitude, equator, longitude, prime meridian, and hemisphere. All right, so go back through, make sure you understand those. And now we're going to look at an actual map here, so we can point out some of those mapping elements, okay? So the very first thing that we're looking for is a title, all right? And so this map title is right here. It's just Mexico. It is a map of Mexico. All right, so the next thing we're looking for, different symbols. So you can see here we have all kinds of different lines. There's a little airplane located there and there. There are different dots here. Looks like they might represent cities. And then the next thing we're looking for, labels. Look, we can see Durango. We can see Mexico City. We can see La Paz. All right, we can see all of these different labels of cities. And the next thing we are looking at, colors. All right, so like I had said before, those browns and greens, they're usually land. So land is over here. Blue usually represents the water. So lines of latitude and lines of longitude. You can see them down here, all the different degrees being located. And then you can faintly, just a little bit, see all the different lines in the map if you're following my mouse here. They're not quite as defined as some maps might be, but they're still there. A scale. We can see our scale down here. All right, so it doesn't directly say if it's an inch or so, but if you took out a ruler and you measured it, it would probably be about an inch represent 100 miles, or an inch represents about 150 kilometers. All right, and then the legend. So here's our legend over here, and it tells us exactly what those symbols mean, right? The national capitals, state capitals, different cities, airports, international boundaries, so we see that right here, and the main roads, and you can see all those red lines going through. And not everything is represented, but you can also see a little bit of the rivers as well, right? We can see the Gulf of Mexico, the oceans being represented and labeled. And then the compass rose, so we see this over here, they just have north labeled, but generally a lot of maps will do that. They assume that you know exactly what a compass means and how to read one. So for this one, north, the next part, east, never eat, soggy, south, waffles, west. And then a locator globe. And I picked this map specifically because it has a locator globe, and that's right here. So it shows you a little globe, and it highlights what we're looking at on the map, which is Mexico. So that just gives you an example of exactly how to read a map. All right, so for your activity this week, I want you guys to create a mental map. And I'm sure you guys have done this before. Always good practice, though. All right, so there are 3 maps that you guys can try practicing with, messing around with, and I want you to include as many of these mapping elements as possible. You can then take a picture of it, you can send it to me. Some of you might be really tech savvy and you want to create your map online. Highly encourage it if you know how to do that. So the first map, I want you to create a map from your bedroom to the kitchen. All right, so from your bedroom to the kitchen, I want you to create a map. Second one, all right, I want you to create a map from your house to your best friend's house or to your neighbor's house, right? Wherever it may be in the neighborhood, from your house to your best friend's house. And the third map, if you're able to do this, create a map from your house to the school. You might have to look up the directions on Google Maps, or if you remember it from your bus route, go ahead and do that. Remember, include as many of the mapping elements as you can. On the back of the piece of paper, write directions out. All right, the same way you would look them up on Google Maps when you're looking how far or how long it takes to get from one location to another. They have the written directions you can look at. I want you to go ahead and write down as detailed as you can, all right? I know this is a little boring and monotonous, but highly encourage it, guys. Along with that, look at the virtual model UN and see what steps need to be taken there, right? So every week there will be a little bit more detail to research, get into. Doesn't take a super long time, but to get us stoked and ready for the end of the school year, which is only 8 weeks away. All right, so I hope you guys are having a wonderful time at home. Remember, you can call, you can email me. I am always here. I'm always here for you guys, and I love you guys very much. We will be doing our read aloud book this week as well. At the time I'm recording this, we haven't quite picked a time and date yet, but I'm super stoked to get started and see you guys again. All right, so love you guys. I'll see you next week.